Well, good evening and good to be with you again on Geelong Newsbeat and possibly for some on YouTube. The campaign that's been initiated by the Geelong Advertiser under the heading of Just Think is designed, and quite commendably, to try and curb the excessive drinking which is marring not just Geelong but street life, city life in so many places in Australia and beyond. It's a good campaign. You may have seen the headline on the Advertiser last week, and the coverage with the Geelong footballers, and also featuring a number of victims of horrific street violence over the past couple of years. This particular photo here is of Ben O'Toole, who I know quite well, and I can remember being called to the Geelong Hospital to attend to Ben in a spiritual capacity before he was airlifted to the Alfred Hospital just after the horrific attack which nearly cost him his life. Fortunately, thank God, he's recovered, but it was a very close call, and the papers have been filled with many details of similar incidents which beset us. I live right on Yarra Street, and I hear a lot of the yahoos going past at all hours of the morning, and it's really not it's not a happy sound, and it's certainly not a happy sight to see so many people whose lives can be so dramatically affected, sometimes literally for the rest of their lives. The Just Think campaign by the Advertiser, as I say, is quite commendable, but I wonder whether we really have to look a little more deeply into not just curbing the violence, but looking at the whole alcohol and often drug-fueled situation which brings this about. Certainly on the weekend we had any number of different incidents in Melbourne which are highlighted in the Sunday Herald Sun, and hardly a weekend goes by without this sort of thing being having to deal with this within our communities. The whole question of what alcohol is doing, particularly at a young age, is something which, from a medical perspective, we need to address a lot more carefully. Physicians tell us that alcohol on a developing young brain, and we're reading regularly of young people, young teenagers, and even as young as 11, 12 and 13, imbibing alcohol on a regular basis, what that is doing to their brains, leave aside the behaviour, but what that is doing to them for the long-term future is quite extraordinary. And we need to recognise that this is just not good enough. Somehow or other we need to get behind what's happening with young people in particular, but with a society which seems to be really set on a certain degree of self-destruction. Now, I suppose as a Catholic priest, as a Christian minister, I've got a bit of a vested interest in this, certainly not in the alcohol industry, but in the sense of people's well-being and the importance of some sort of spiritual element of life, a religious faith. And if we look at society and our laws and our customs, sure, there have always been problems. People have been at war with each other and all sorts of things, but war on our own streets on a continuous basis, not being able to walk down the streets, the lack of care and politeness even that we have for one another, the sort of language that is being used and put across our television screens on a regular basis, all of these things point to a society in a large degree of disarray. And maybe we've got to look, we've certainly all got to just think, but we've got to do more than just think. We've got to really research and search our souls, our hearts, our minds, our consciences to say what's really wrong with us as a society that we can't walk down the street. Why is it that we have to have a campaign such as the Geelong Advertiser's Just Think? We need to have a very deep look at what we're doing with each oncoming generation, because it's not pretty. It's not pretty to look at, and I can tell you from first-hand experience it's not very pretty to listen to either. It's a bit of a wake-up call that we've got. These pictures of violence in our papers are something that we don't need to skim over, but to think about and maybe the very best brains in our community and our society need to look and say, what have we let go of? What are we looking over? And what are we maybe even deliberately avoiding, which is staring us in the face in terms of what we need to do to stop us from warring in the way which we are with one another. Good to be with you on Geelong News.